The single most common question I get asked is, how do you get into e-commerce marketing? Or how do you advance your career in e-com? Or how does someone get a job like mine? And for a long time, I would tell them my story, but that's only one guy's experience. So today I brought together 3 of our industry's best chief marketing officers to explain their career journey, and I share a little bit of mine in each of these conversations as well. So make sure you stick around to hear from Connor MacDonald from Ridge Wallet, Connor Rolain from Hexclad, and MacCoy the Maverick Merkley of Portland Leather Goods. But first, this episode of Tactical and Practical is brought to you by IntelliGems and Postscript. You guys know by now they are the only 2 softwares I trust with my life. I've been a paying customer of each of theirs for years. And when I started a podcast, they were the only 2 companies I reached out to see if they were interested in sponsoring, because I'm already used to recommending them to really any e-com brand. So if you need help testing offers or prices or creative or site features on your website where all of your conversions happen, which, spoiler alert, if you're not doing that, you should be. But the days of paying a CRO agency $5 or $10 a month are over. You don't need that anymore. You just need an IntelliGems account. So go to intelligems.io, tell them I sent you, and start adding dollars to your bottom line today. Next up, we have Postscript, and this comes at a unique time because I'm recording this the day after Black Friday, where there was a lot of hiccups in the SaaS world yesterday. A lot of email and SMS platforms had trouble sending out messages, but Postscript did not. We sent out 2 campaigns yesterday to our entire list, and they both sent within like 120 seconds of me pressing send. So no hiccups there. And if I did ever have a problem, their support team's always been incredible. So if you are scrambling right now to find an SMS platform that you need and is reliable and trustworthy, then go to postscript.io, tell them the Tactical and Practical podcast sent you, and never fall short on SMS again. All right. First up, we're going to listen to some career journey topics from the CMO of Ridge, Connor MacDonald. 3rd-time guest on Tactical and Practical? Unprecedented in this economy, but Connor Mac is back. What's up, dude?
Amazing. Do you have many 3-time guests?
No, you're the only multi-time.
Dude, let's go.
So it's crazy, dude. But dude, thanks so much for doing this. It's the most common question I get asked is like, how do I get into e-com? How do I advance my career in e-com? A lot of people in their 20s, either coming out of school or like they're in their first job at an agency or brand somewhere, want to keep moving up. And I'm like, I don't know. I know how I got here. I don't know if that applies to everyone. So I'm talking to some goats of e-com, guys who have carved their own path here. So I'll forward the question to you. What's the best way to start your career in e-com, and how'd you kind of move up through the ranks?
Amazing. All right. So I'll try to hit, I'm like frantically jotting down a couple notes because I want to hit everything that I want to. So let me say, I think e-com is an interesting industry in that the people who, and I'm biased, but I think some of the people who have managed to succeed the most have rare crossover skills of being creative and analytical. Like I said, I'm biased. I had no idea I wanted to work in e-com. I happened to graduate with a film degree and an economics degree. So I'm comfortable in spreadsheets, and I knew how to do stuff in Photoshop. And that was like incredibly valuable early on. And I think I've talked with many people who have very unique backgrounds in that sense. So that's one. I think e-com is just like, you have to typically wear many hats, and as diverse of a background as you can get, the better. 2, I started at an agency. I worked at 2 agencies. I co-founded a small agency with the Ridge CEO, Sean Frank. Agencies are fantastic, massive experience. I always joke, you like age in dog years. So just as quickly as possible, get exposure to as many channels and brands and industries as possible. I think that just leads to kind of an outsized impact because you can more strategically do what you want next. That's how we ended up at Ridge. We worked with dozens of brands over a couple years, and Ridge had the secret sauce that we wanted to go, on board full-time with. Actually not even the last, but a bit of luck involved here. I happened to grow within I grew within a growing brand, within a growing industry. So that is like compounded, that is like exponential growth. That's significantly easier than even if I'm an incredibly talented person working within a dying industry, my personal ceiling on my career is just far more capped. Nobody cared about Ridge when we were doing $15 million a year. I'd like beg the newsletters to like mention us, like put us in your, top 100 or whatever. We're a cool bootstrap brand. Nobody cared. But as Ridge grew and as I grew within Ridge, that just became more valuable over time. So you can think about it from that perspective a little bit. Obviously, when you're 22, 23 years old, like you are investing with your time where you choose to work. And as much as possible, if you can line up those different levels of growth, I think is really impactful. The last one that I've got here, which is like a little less crystallized in my mind, but like I've worked with hundreds of people at this point. And I was telling my brother recently, I think there's just a very simple common thread between people who are the best across any like level of experience, across any part of the business. And it's really just someone comfortable acting with agency. So willing to take ownership, willing to be proactive, acting like an individual, and then just competence at the end of the day. I think I don't think e-commerce is rocket science to any degree. And I think if you can pair those two things together and work hard and be organized, be a pleasure to work with, that is just a massive value. I think I have some of those traits. I'm not sure if I've got all of them, but like stacking all those things up has led to 10 years or so of like some pretty solid career growth. So that's how's that answer? How does that all strike you?
That's great. And it's really interesting to see a lot of common threads throughout everyone that I've talked to. This is the third one of these I've done, and it lines up with other Connor story and mine as well. Like we all, did you go to college? Yeah, you said film and economics degree. So we all went to college, didn't learn like necessarily the exact thing that we wanted to work on, didn't get the degree in that. All ended up either at an agency or starting your own agency, and then found a brand that was either a client or like some close relation to like hop onto. And I think the biggest piece of this that a lot of young folks coming out of school miss is like you have to be somewhere where you can make an impact. And I know a lot of people get sucked into like jobs at bigger companies with probably bigger starting salaries and perks and work-life balance, right, but where they can't make an impact or where it's really hard for them to make an impact. And that's just a real slow grind to 65. And it's going to be hard to make like significant personal jumps in your income. But to me, like that's always been the most important thing is like, I need to go somewhere where I can affect positive change here. Because if I prove that I can do it here, either one, that company will pay me more, or two, I can jump ship based on that and probably get a big bump. What have you kind of seen as far as like, as Ridge has grown now, you obviously have a big team. How are you thinking about kind of like leading your, employees in their personal career growth?
Yeah, I talk about this with a handful of employees. There are functions within the business that I say, there's a couple of them, but that I think are particularly exciting in the sense that there are disproportionate opportunities for growth, right? Like without speaking too specifically about anybody, there are certain teams or departments that are more built up and there's just naturally kind of less upwards mobility. And then there are other ones, and performance creative would be the one where we hired our first performance creative strategist 3.5 years ago or something. And I was like, look, we've never had one. Very few ecom brands have one. I think this will become more and more popular over time. I think this is an amazing place for you to build your skill set. There's a ladder to build below you as our demands grow from a performance creative standpoint. And then for you personally in your career, as you're building up, professional capital, like if you decide to go someplace else in the future, you will have generated a lot of value for yourself here. So I have that conversation very specifically. I'd say the same thing. I guess the other one that comes to mind is like the crossroad of growth and the ecom product. So like some people would call that CRO or ecom marketing or whatever you want to call that. That is also, I think, an interesting thing that has been like underutilized at most D2C companies. So in Ridge, we have a number of people working at that intersection, and I'm pretty forward that I'm like, I think this is one of the most exciting pieces of the business to work on currently. That is very highly correlated with the potential for upwards mobility, the amount of kind of career capital you can generate.
Awesome conversation with Connor. I've followed him for years, but never really knew his true origin story. So that was great to hear. And next up, we're going to go to the next Connor, Mr. Rolain, the head of growth from Hexclad.
I didn't study like marketing or anything in college. Like my degree's in neurobiology and English. Just like a random weird combination. And of my buddies that did study business and ended up in like digital marketing or media buying or whatever, like, or e-commerce in general, like, you know, if you ask them about their class, like, yeah, like not really anything I learned is applicable in my day to day. So maybe one day, but that's why I also like asking people this, because if you ask, 50 people, you'll get 50 different answers into like how they got here. But yeah, I guess so I went to UW-Madison. I majored in neurobiology. I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do with that. I was kind of like, I knew I wanted to do something that would be challenging. I thought maybe healthcare, maybe not. I figured if I decided to go in the business route, that I would learn it in the experience I got. I felt like I wasn't necessarily missing out on like not getting a business degree. So that's the route I took. And then,
you're not,
I guess,
by the way, from the guy that has a degree in marketing with a minor in business, you didn't miss anything. It's not.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Well, thanks for reiterating that. Making me feel better about my decisions. But yeah, I guess going way back, like this is the classic job. Like I remember in high school, teacher would be like, there's so many jobs that don't exist today that a lot of you are going to be doing, when you get into the workforce. And like this is the classic example of that. Like being a Facebook ad buyer. I'm 29.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, same age.
Yeah. So like being a Facebook ad buyer, or like just like all the digital marketing roles that exist in e-commerce today didn't exist when, you and I were 12, 15 years old. So it's cool to see how different people get here. But like going way back, I was always into like the business of the internet. Like I remember like when I was a kid, I loved Craigslist. I thought it was the coolest shit in the world. One of my buddies who I work with still at Hexclad, Cam, he was like the first into this. Actually, I think Mike from Simple Modern started it called Quibids or something like that. Are you familiar? Where you like, yeah. So he was doing that shit. Like I was playing RuneScape, like bartering. Like I was always like, looking back, it makes sense. I didn't see it at the time, but then now like in retrospect, I'm like, all right, this makes a lot of sense based on like the shit I was interested in. But yeah, so I was like 21, I guess, at Madison trying to figure out what the hell I wanted to do with my life. And yeah, I started just getting interested. Like I said, I'm an English major. So I was like, how can I kind of utilize that? I started doing some research and was just basically coming across all these like digital publications that needed content writers, like blog posts, all sorts of things, mainly like digital blog posts. So that was like my first dip into it when I was about 21 years old. Immediately, like my first taste of digital marketing was very entrepreneurial, which I liked. Like I was literally going online, looking up on job forums, like finding these like content copywriting, like roles or jobs, whatever. They weren't even full time; they're just freelance. So I've always had that like connection between digital marketing and entrepreneurship, which I think is like part of the reason I love it so much. So I did that. From there, I did a few internships at Madison. So I did an email marketing internship. I was writing email copy for the continuing studies program at Madison. So basically, the office at UW-Madison that tries to recruit people into like certificate programs. So I was actually writing like the email copy that would be, going out to undergraduates that they were trying to target to get into these postgraduate programs. Did that for a little while. Then I transitioned into like more of a kind of like a scrappier startup. It was in retrospect, a pretty shitty food delivery app or food ordering and pickup app. But that was really cool because I got to do like everything at that company. We were doing marketing, we were doing sales, both on the consumer side and on the restaurant side, like literally door knocking on the streets of Madison, like trying to get people to sign up for our, trying to get restaurants to sign up for our application. And also like the kind of niche that we ended up going down was like connecting offices in Madison to businesses in the area. So like a corporate office could place like a mass order, we would cover the delivery cost. And then, and then you have like, 50 to 150 orders. So that's kind of where we niched down. So we were trying to like bring on restaurants to be in the app so people could order from, and then signing up corporate offices. So I did that for about a year. All the while, because we were in the restaurant space, I was just like very much paying attention to like what our not clients, but like the restaurants that we were onboarding. I was just like paying attention to what they were doing in their digital marketing, and a lot of them just like weren't doing much at all. At this internship, that's when I first started. That's when I got introduced to Facebook ads, because part of it was like consumer onboarding, right, and like getting consumers to sign up. So we started playing around with like app install ads. That was my first experience with Facebook ads. So I did that for like, I don't know, about a year, all the while as I'm getting deeper and deeper into Facebook ads. Meanwhile, this is when Instagram organic was not, it was like past the golden age of that, right? Like you're not like getting what you get on TikTok nowadays, where you can like really get a good organic following and traction. Like, so I'm running Facebook ads and I'm like, holy crap, like we are getting way more reach and views on this shit than we're getting on any of our organic posts. Like we are getting 10x the number of followers we have. Meanwhile, we do an organic post and we're getting, a fourth of the views of the total followers we have. So it started to click for me that this was like, that's when like the top of funnel kind of concept really started to click for me. I'm like, oh, we can actually reach net new people through advertising. And that is super valuable to these people. So then I started like, ultimately we left that internship and started just offering digital services to a variety of businesses, me and the guy that I was at the internship with. So we were working with like restaurants, and we would do like organic social for them, but we'd also help them drive like new foot traffic. So we'd be like, hey, we would kind of craft up these campaigns and drive them with paid media. So it's like, hey, you're a taco restaurant. Let's do like a 2-hour happy hour. Let's run like geo-targeted ads. If someone shows you the ad, then they get the taco deal. So we started doing stuff like that. And then we started expanding outside of restaurants and like all sorts of like small businesses in Madison. We ultimately landed on this local tourism company. Have you seen those? Where do you live, Nate?
South Carolina.
Have you seen those like party bikes, like with 14 people on them?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
they're like,
yep. I've seen them in Nashville.
So
a bunch of.
I knew the manager in Madison of that business, and he saw I was doing some of this stuff, and he reached out, and we started running ads for them. And like great, it worked so well for the same reasons I just mentioned, right? We were reaching net new people that they were not reaching through their organic social. The transaction was happening online, so we could actually drive the conversion, and it was also local geo-targeted. So I'm like, holy crap, we're spending $500 a month, and depending on the brand, getting between $3,000 to $10,000 in attributed revenue out. Now granted, I'm sure some of that was like Facebook slapping their stamp on someone that was already going to convert, right? I'm sure that was at least some of it. But basically, once I saw the traction with that and that specific business model, I made like a case study. I hired a VA to like go scrape emails of these types of businesses, and I just started doing like email outreach using that case study. I ended up over the course of like probably 3 years working with like, I don't know, 10, 15 of those like party trolley bike businesses and boats across the world. Really, we had like it was mainly in the US, but I had a company in like Amsterdam we were working with, and then a few other like Ecom brands. Like there was a pet food company and a few others, but it was mainly like I kind of niched down. And I guess at the time I didn't have this vocabulary. It was kind of like an agency in that like travel, bike, boat business niche. So I basically did that. I actually took a different job out of school full time. Like at this point when I graduated, I've been doing digital marketing for like 3 years, and I kept doing it, but I ended up actually taking a job for a very short period of time in medical device sales. All the while knowing that I wanted to do digital marketing full time. So I kept doing my side hustle stuff. And then ultimately,
was that mainly just for like income stability? Like you just wanted a paycheck coming in, or what was
like
kind
why
of
it took it was that like and I also had a degree in neurobiology. So I'm like, how can I combine these things? At this point, I had some decent business experience and like sales experience, because like we were like literally door knocking in Madison, like cold pitching, businesses. Awesome. It was a really good experience. And I'm like, all right, how can I combine these things? And I thought it was very interesting, but like I just loved like startups, e-commerce. I did not want to be like medical device sales is like super corporate. Like you got to work your way up the ladder. It's like, it's a tenure based kind of thing. I did not like that. And I ultimately just like really love digital marketing and growing startups. So I ultimately ended like what I was doing. I knew I wanted to do that. I feel bad in retrospect, but I like started putting out content on LinkedIn about the digital marketing stuff while I was doing my other job. And ultimately the COO of Homestead Studio at the time, Nate Litt, reached out to me because they're based out of Appleton, where I'm from. And, you know, at this point, Homestead was, I don't know, they had 5 employees maybe. And they're like, hey, we're bringing on media buyers. So it was Zach, Tim Ayton, and Riley Trotter were buying ads. And then there was a handful of other like creative resources. So I was like their 4th media buyer hire. Quit my job like 2 weeks, like right away after meeting these guys. I was like, oh yes, this is definitely what I want to do. So they made me a job offer. I quit my job. I started with Homestead. And then I was at Homestead for like 3 years, just running growth for tons of ecom brands, just getting like an insane amount of reps, doing paid ads, analytics, creative, landers, retention, just really getting like my MBA in e-commerce and business. So I did that for 3 years. Then I left Homestead. I did my own thing for about a year. And then after that year, I joined Hexclad full time, and that was January 1st of 2023. And that's the 7-minute version of it.
Hell yeah. Awesome, man. Dude, there's so many similarities in my story and everyone else I've talked to for this episode. We all kind of realized that college was not going to give us everything we needed to succeed. We all accidentally started marketing agencies before we knew what that meant. And then from there, like all of my jobs like were past clients, like were people that I worked with just running paid social, like as a freelance guy. And then they're like, hey, do you want to come be our marketing director? Then a past client said, hey, do you want to come be our CMO? And like it's grown a crazy amount from there. But one thing I want to hone in on here before I let you hop off: how important is it to work with tiny companies where you can actually make an impact? Because I've watched so many people, peers, colleagues, like they take a better job than I had out of college at a bigger, better company. Their salary for the first couple of years is probably way better than mine, but they weren't a top dog in that company. They weren't someone that could actually drive performance. So since then, promotions and salaries and advancement haven't come like they've come for guys like us. How important do you think that is, like, to be somewhere that you can make an impact?
It's everything. I mean, you should be trying early on in your career to put yourself in like a sink or swim situation. Like it should honestly like make you nervous.
Yeah.
Like the not succeeding part should make you like, I remember being at Homestead, like in the first 6 months, like before client calls, I would be like so nervous, like sick to my stomach levels of nervous. Cause I was like, these guys are trusting me to like grow their business. They're putting a lot of faith into me. Like you should seek out that opportunity, because that's what really like makes you really talented. And it's either going to filter you out, or it's going to like make you a really talented marketer and operator. And yeah, like you have to listen. I always tell people that I could never go back working for a company where I didn't have like instantaneous access and like impact on top line and bottom line revenue. And that was the benefit of Homestead. Like we were working with mainly bootstrap brands, a lot of launch brands, a lot of brands that were doing like 5 figures per month, looking to scale into 6, some doing 6, looking to scale into 7. Ultimately, Hexclad was like the biggest brand I worked on at Homestead. But yeah, man, there's no better experience than working with like a bootstrap startup where every dollar counts and you have a huge impact on their growth. Like that experience is second to none. And if you're like in a role, I don't know, I think it's very dangerous to spend like year 23 to 28. Like I think it's very dangerous to spend that time in like a cushy role where you don't have a ton of responsibility, you're not learning a ton, you're not failing a ton and learning from that, you don't have a huge impact on the top or bottom line. Like I think it's a very dangerous position to be in. Like I would always take an opportunity at a smaller, scrappier startup where you have more impact on the company than like a big corporation that you're going to kind of get put into their like it's the same thing I said about the medical device world. It's like it's very tenure based, tier based, everything's like pre-built out for you. I think that's a dangerous place to go right out of school. I think you could do that later.
Yeah,
right? Like
do it when you're 30 and shit hasn't gone how you hoped it would go. But yeah, I'm a huge believer in like place outsized bets in your 20s when there's not that much to lose, when you can afford to live on 50 grand a year because you don't have a house or kids or a wife or anything. Like do things that have crazy upside that might put you in that sink or swim position. But if it works out, you end up 28 and 29 like we are in a way better spot than for me like I ever dreamed I would be in. you know?
Same. Yeah, same. I never thought I'd be in this position. I never thought I'd have the skill set I have. And that really just comes through reps. But those reps were only only possible because of the role I was in. The easiest advice I always give to people that are like coming out of college or in college or like, how do you get into e-commerce marketing? How do you get into digital marketing in general? Go work at an agency right out of college for 3 years. That is like e-commerce growth agencies are the equivalent of like, and it's the equivalent of like what investment banking is in the finance world. Like go grind at an agency for 3 years, get exposed to tons of brands. You're going to have a bunch of success stories. You're probably going to have just as many failure stories, and you are going to learn so much. You're going to be hands on keyboard. It's going to be really hard and you're going to question it, but there is no better way to cut your teeth in e-commerce, in my opinion. I just, yeah, at some point, I think people graduate out of that and they're like, all right, I want to focus on a single brand, which is what I did. And I don't think it's the only path, but if you really want to get into e-com and you're questioning how to do it, like, I think the agency route is such a good way to start. And like, I know you didn't start that way. I know there's a lot of people that didn't start that way. And I don't think you have to start that way, but I just think there's something about the exposure to, hundreds of brands over the course of 2-3 years. Like you just start to get a feel for like what works and what doesn't work from all aspects, right? From a unit economics perspective, from a paid media, from a retention, just a product in general. Like I'm so grateful for Zach and Nate for giving me an opportunity at Homestead, because I certainly wouldn't be here in my current role if I didn't have that foundational experience.
Awesome, man. Dude, thanks so much for doing this. I think this episode's going to be like crazy valuable for a lot of kids coming up. So thank you,
man,
dude.
Totally. I'm excited to see it.
We'll link your Twitter, Marketing Operators Pod. We'll link Hexclad in here. Follow Connor. If you guys are listening to my pod, you should be listening to Connor's, because that's where I learn everything from. So thanks, dude. Appreciate it. Talk soon.
Hey, thank you, man. Later, Nate.
Fantastic. Connor is another guy that I've just really gotten to know in the last year or so. So I'm hearing his first story for the first time as well. A degree in neuro, whatever he said, is insane, but clearly working out for him. All right, the last one, and maybe the most important one, because you might be thinking at this point, my name's not Connor. I'm never going to land one of these jobs. I'm never going to have these awesome careers. But me and MacCoy are set out to disprove that myth. How you can get ahead in e-com if your name isn't Connor. So without further delay, the CMO of Portland Leather Goods, MacCoy Merkley. MacCoy Merkley, CMO of Portland Leather Goods. Super pumped to have you back on the podcast, man. What's up?
Nay, not too much. It's Q4, as you are well aware. So I'm glad to be here. It's a crazy time of year, but I'm excited to talk about this subject.
I think the fact that we're both podcasting in mid-November means business is probably going pretty good, right?
Yeah, it's not a dumpster fire. Otherwise, I probably wouldn't be here. So, the world is. I'm glad that we kind of swung out of the funk that everyone was in the beginning of the year. But no, it's going well. We're excited to finish out the year. We're always like halfway through the year. I get more excited about the year to come than the year we're in. So I'm kind of in that phase. I'm excited about 2025.
Yeah, awesome. Well, dude, pumped that you're joining us for this episode. It's the question I get asked most often is like, how do you start in e-com? How did you get to where you're at in your career? And I can tell my story, but that's only mine. So super pumped to have you and the Connors and a couple other people on this episode to kind of share how they got here and kind of what your road to CMO has looked like.
Well, if I can't share like a diversity of opinion, I can at least share a diversity of first name. So I'm excited for that. But I mean, I'm recording this not hearing like any of the other stories that you've been told. So I don't know like how common or like what the typical like entry point looks like. I think mine was a little uncommon. I'm not in comparison to anyone else or anything else, but I started with Portland Leather Goods. So my marketing journey begins, I don't know if it's a marketing period, but like my marketing journey and advertising journey really began with Portland Leather Goods. So that was 2018. I found this crazy little ad on Craigslist. Curtis, our founder, was like famous for just like ripping crazy copy on Craigslist and trying to attract whoever he could find within a few mile radius. For that ad was titled Digital Media Specialist. And I didn't know what that meant, but at the time I was a wedding photographer and I was just basically wasting my mornings doing nothing, like waking up way too late, staying up way too late as well. Just wasting my time. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to go get a job that gets me out of bed in the morning. And I'm a photographer and this is digital media specialist. I kind of know that, I guess. I don't know. Let me apply for it.
Figure it out, right?
Yeah, I'll figure it out. We'll figure it out. So
before that, college, what was your major, high school, any of that stuff?
Yeah, so I grew up in rural Washington, like way out in the sticks. So I had like Washington is famous for rain, and it's also famous for incredible summers. However, I didn't enjoy those summers because I had terrible allergies. So I grew up way, way, way out in the sticks, homeschooled, inside all winter because it was raining,
Just bubble
inside all summer because, yeah, exactly, bubble boy to the extreme. So literally homeschooled, no college, like just got married really young, decided she was a wedding hair and makeup artist. So I decided to join forces and do wedding photography. So no college, nothing, right? So one of my favorite questions, like, what did you study? Where'd you go to college? I'm like, nothing. I graduated second in my high school because I was homeschooled with my brother. So like number 2 is not bad, but relative to the total class size, it's not quite that impressive. Anyways, digital media specialist, walked in the door, did the interview. I didn't have an interview. So I wrote a cover letter. I didn't have a resume, so I didn't submit a resume. Walked in the door, walked upstairs, which was our like factory floor at the time. We made everything in Portland, and was like thrown into a spontaneous group interview. Met Curtis, our founder. I thought he was messing with me, actually, primarily because of the question you asked, which is like about college. He's like, where'd you go to school? I said, I didn't go to school. I didn't do this, I do that. And we started riffing back and forth. And I thought he was just making fun of me. I thought for sure I just like bombed the job interview because I never went to college, and he was like laughing at me. So I started making fun of him back. Long story short, he's like, he kicks me out of the interview first, and he's like, come back in 30 minutes. And I was like, okay, whatever, cool. So that was the intro. I was a wedding photographer. At the time, I knew how to run ads for my wedding photography business because I was targeting engaged women in the Portland area for wedding photography services. And we had products that we were targeting and making for bridesmaids and groomsmen, like dop kits, makeup bags. You monogram them, you sell them to wedding parties. So I said, I know how to advertise those things. Let me take a shot at it. And we were talking like $20 a day. I used to have to get like written permission to spend $20 a day. That was 2018. Things just grew and grew, and the business was the .com side of the business was about 1 million. The Etsy side of the business, like that was Portland Leather Goods, was Etsy. They're about 3.5 million. And so they were not stuck, but kind of circling that same number a few years in a row. And I started just running ads to this website and taking over. And I made a conscious effort to like not have anything to do with Etsy and to be like the person in charge of the .com. There was already like a shell there. Products were uploaded, but really no paid promotion whatsoever going to it. And just fell in love with like advertising and marketing and like problem solving and really doing like the whole spectrum of ecom for the .com. Again, we had whole teams dedicated to Etsy, and it was me dedicated to the website. So that things went well. We were able to finish out that year again, just a little over 1 million. The next year we did, I think it was 5. And the next year after that was 15, went to 30 to 60. And then we're now above the 9-figure mark. So got promoted to the director of marketing right as COVID started. I finally looked at Curtis and I said, hey, okay, I'm ready to hang up the camera, ready to put aside all my wedding photography contracts and come in full-time. Let's do this. I had a baby on the way in January. He said, okay, great. So I canceled my contracts. 2020 hits, boom, the whole world stops. And Curtis is like, we can't make product. I think we got to shut down this company. I was like, no, there's not an option for me. It's literally not an option for me. I'll sell items on like a pre-order with no guaranteed delivery date at all, like Kickstarter style. And we're going to keep this thing going.
Well, it's not like the wedding photography business was going to boom in COVID
exactly.
either. So you were like,
I was just rude, like brand new baby, wife not working. She was, again, a hair and makeup artist. So she couldn't work. Like the state of Oregon just shut the whole industry down. I was like, we are literally not shutting down this business. Like I am working. I don't care what it takes. We're selling stuff, even though that we're not going to deliver it. We went to pre-order, and that kept us alive. We kind of got to see, I call it like the heartbeat monitor. We got to see like the potential to kind of rev back up where everyone was at home, and we realized like the world wasn't ending in a lot of ways. And we came back out of COVID really strong. Got promoted to CMO in July of 2022, built my team, and it's been a wild ride since that. So yeah, as I mentioned, we're over the 9-figure mark. So kind of my headline of my career, if you will, is like from 1 to 100 million is my Portland Leather Goods experience.
So interesting that you've been with one brand the whole time. Like that's an outlier in the conversations I've had so far. The similarities are like, even when you say you were being lazy, you were being entrepreneurial still. Like you were still doing your own thing, probably hustling as much as you had to pay your bills. But like that's been a theme with both the Connors and with me. Like one, college didn't help any of us much. I have a degree in marketing. I know you say like I had one professor who was great, that I took 3 marketing classes with. The other like 18 I took were super irrelevant. Graduated with a 2.4 GPA because I was doing just enough to graduate, and I was like, C's are great. And then like accidentally started a marketing agency my junior year because I was just freelancing, and did that for a while. Then one client wanted to hire me, then another client wanted to make me their CMO, and left that brand to come here 3 years ago. But how important it is, or how important do you think it is in our roles to like kind of be a little entrepreneurial, kind of like have a sense of what running a business is like? Because a lot of what you and I have talked about on the marketing side is like, it's more just alignment with the business and like being a good operator more than the marketing tactics a lot of the time. So do you think that experience kind of like helped you grow into the CMO that you are now?
Yeah, I think for sure. I mean, I think it'd be hard if we're specifically talking about the lane of like, how do I grow to be a CMO? And like, I'm sure there's all sorts of different types of people listening. And maybe that's not like the specific title you're after, but whether it's like an executive in any level or any company in any division, whether it's operations or finance or whatever, like that entrepreneurial spirit, which is really the ability to kind of like step out and see the bigger picture and realize like unless again, you are the CEO, but if you're running a division at the highest level, meaning an executive level CMO, whatever it is, like you're only one piece of the business. And what you get from entrepreneurial experience or entrepreneurial attitude is like understanding that like you coexist and you need everyone's help so desperately to succeed. And you only own so much of your success and so much of your failures. You really like, you have to work together. You have to be aligned to make this company successful. And I think that you intuitively get that as an entrepreneur. Like you can't just like crush it at this one thing and then expect value to come out of nowhere. So I think for me that was a really big benefit, because to the point I was a wedding photographer, if I didn't get up and advertise, if I didn't get up and post on Instagram, like I didn't eat, like business didn't come in. I later actually had a photography studio business. So like I went down to downtown Portland and I rented a piece of real estate, a commercial office, and turned that into a rentable daylight studio. Like, so meaning like daylight, meaning I don't have lights for you. I have literally nothing. It's just a big box. Come in and shoot your photos while it's raining. And I remember the first year that really went well, where I put the right systems and the right structure in place, and then, hired somebody to run that, and it ran by itself and made me money. And I was like, okay, this is awesome. This is what like a well-oiled machine looks like. And then jumping into the port and leather goods experience, when you're in a startup phase, it's just chaos, and there's nothing exists, and what does exist is chaotic or too small to really, run seriously at to get you where you're going to go. So it's just, there's a lot. So the entrepreneurial spirit is everything. Then just the attitude or the experience to see that and like understand the amount and the volume of things going right across the entire company that have to come together to make you successful. It's not just you running some slick meta ads that day.
Yeah. Another common thread through all of these is putting yourself in a position to make an impact at an early job. Like I've seen a lot of people, a lot of peers, like they took jobs out of college at bigger, better companies for probably a lot more than I was making my first and second year out of college. But their growth has not been on the trajectory that mine is. I assume you're on a similar and way bigger trajectory than me. But like, I think that's so important. Like, it's tempting to go take that job at a big company that maybe you've looked up to, and maybe the paycheck's 80 grand, and at 24 you're pumped about it. But at those companies, that's not going to double and triple and quadruple in a matter of years. And I think that's something that all of us have kind of experienced and have ended up way better off for it. But it's because we put ourselves in a position in a more risky job, and a job that probably was shitty early on. But it put us in the position where we were at least more in control of our destiny than, taking a job at a big corporation.
Yeah, I think 100%. I mean, like my starting salary at Port Leather Goods was $13 an hour, 1,000 hours a year. So $13,000 an hour, right? It's that risk has kind of paid off. And again, I was doing this to supplement like existing income. Like I couldn't have afforded that opportunity. I couldn't have afforded to come work at that rate if I didn't have other opportunities and other things going for me. But you're so right. And you mentioned this is a question you get asked a lot about. Like, this is like, okay, how do I get to where you are, whatever that means? Or if there's people, looking and saying like, I want a career, or I want a trajectory like that. Like, what are some of the component pieces that got you there? I break that, and I'd love to hear your opinion on this too, and maybe I could square it with some of the other people. Like I break that pretty much like right down the middle, where there's the character and then there's the opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I mean, the character is you. It's what you do when the clock stops. It's also the skill you choose. I mean, there's a bit of that's opportunity, but what are you interested in? What are you passionate about? That's going to, keep you up at night, that you want to continue learning on. And there's a lot to the personality side. And sometimes, when people talk about or ask me that same question, the first thing I start is like the character. And it's not to say like qualify or disqualify anyone, say, okay, you don't have it or you do have it, but maybe you're not quite in the right place, which is the opportunity side. And the opportunity is like, are you in the right car? It's substantially more difficult to advance in a company or a career trajectory where there's gates, or you're not designed to increase or exponentially level up. So like the corporate example you cited, like that system has been designed over generations of business to level people up slowly. It's not designed so if you come in with a sparkle in your eye, you can get promoted to CEO walking by like that. This like fantasy of like the janitor getting promoted to CEO one day is like the company has fail safes to make sure that doesn't happen for the good of the company. So find the right opportunity is finding the right opportunity and pairing that with your personal character is everything, really.
Dude, I think that's so important. And it's so important, I think, to stress too, that like that move won't always be comfortable, and more often than not will not be comfortable. Like early on in my career, I got my first good job like a year and a half out of school. I was a marketing director for a chain of entertainment centers, paid 67 grand, which was a big step up from the year before I freelanced. I think I made like 30. So I was like pumped. Part of like seeing a better opportunity, seeing a brand that I thought was more poised for massive growth, I took a pay cut to 48 grand, which is like 30% pay cut. The year after I got married for like a small ecom brand that I thought could explode, that I was going to be passionate about. And now looking back on it, at the time, it felt like it sucked sometimes. And, that job was, a great, kind of a launch pad for my career. It never really paid off financially there, but like that job definitely got me this job. And looking back on it, it's so easy to be like, oh, that one decision led to, multiplying my income a few times in just 4 years. Like that wasn't ancient history. That was recently. But at the time, like I think my in-laws were pissed about it. My parents were like, what are you doing? You're an idiot. But they didn't see the opportunity, and they didn't like see that like, hey, no, I want the ball in my hands. Essentially, I want to go to a brand that I think is poised to grow, that I think I can blow up. And then that'll pay me back one day.
Yeah, I think it's a lot of it too. What you say, I'm imagining you were able to take a lateral move, right? And you did that probably, I would imagine, and I feel the same way because I have a clarity of like what my goals are. I talk to people all the time, and they're like, well, I want to, they have a component piece which is like, I want to grow in my trajectory. I want to grow in my career, which is really synonymous with like, I want to make more money. And I'm like, okay, how about literally everything besides that? Where do you want to live? What do you want your life to look like? Do you want kids? Do you want to be married? Do you want to drive? What car do you want to drive? And getting clear on that is really helpful because it helps you to make those lateral moves that maybe don't make sense out of context to strangers or passerbys or even like your family. But if you're really clear about, okay, I'm doing this because I'm going to leverage myself into this, into this, into this, into this. And then you look backwards and you connect the dots. You're like, oh, wow, that really worked out for me because I was working towards something, not just like swinging violently. And I think that like life and sometimes career, I think if you, that clarity of goal breeds like an alignment, and alignment with hopefully your behavior outside of work. So like if you're up to your neck in bills and whatnot, like you're probably not going to have the ability to take a risk like that or to move laterally. But life and business sometimes can be full of asymmetric rewards where it's like, okay, I know, although this doesn't pencil out on paper, I'm going to make $5 less an hour or whatever less per year. I know it's going to lead to here or here, or at least it steps in the right direction, and you can move forward with that. So in conjunction with that, I've always been very clear about what I try to be. It's changed for sure, but very clear about what I want in life, and then take as my best guess at steps forward towards that. And so it's made sense even when, on paper it hasn't penciled out. Like, why would you take a job for $13 an hour if you're already successful as a wedding photographer? It only made sense through the lens of like, well, I wasn't even trying to get a career out of it. I was trying to get some other benefit out of it, which was to get myself out of bed. But connecting the dots, that led to this, led to this, led to this. And then I'm happy where I am now because of that clarity and like trying to move forward and improving myself.
Yeah, that's awesome. All right, I got one more question for you, and we might cut it. You tell me.
Okay.
Have you ever thought about leaving? Being at
Have
one
I ever thought about
brand,
leaving?
being at one brand from $1 million a year to $100 million a year. I know the job market for me, I could go get a pretty good paycheck if I wanted to bounce right now. I'm sure for you, it's several times higher than that. Have you ever wanted to leave?
Wanted to and seriously consider are probably different. Like,
Sure.
I talk with Curtis about this openly because if you kind of go back to my story from 2018 to 2020, I didn't need the job like at all. Like I had two other careers. I had my photography studio. I had my wedding photography. I didn't need the job. And I only traded those things for the stability of a paycheck when I had a kid, because I wanted that. I still had the photography studio at the time too. So I still had supplemental income to my main income source. But like the short answer is yes. And I talk with Curtis about that openly all the time. And the way I articulated it was, I am here because I'm learning and I'm accelerating and I'm growing like exponentially. And if and when there is a time where the circumstances of the business make that not true, that's probably my natural exit point in line with what I want with my life. And I talked with Curtis about that openly. And I think that that's true for a lot of people. Like it's just unreasonable to stay in a place that's not facilitating either like your personal growth or your financial goals. However, it's Curtis and the company and the opportunity has always provided like massive upside. And so I've never been close for a second because it's just, awesome. We're spiraling upwards so fast. But that same thing is true, I think, today, where it's like, if for 5 years we're not growing and the company's not going anywhere, is that a natural jumping off point for me along with other people? Probably so. But we haven't come close to that in any specific day, although it's like been a very like acknowledged and open like letter, I guess you would say, to Curtis about the opportunity that I feel like I have here at Portland Thurgoods.
Yeah, that's awesome. Lesson to founders out there: when you got a good guy, give him that upside because he'll stay happy and stay around for a long time. Dude, thank you so much for coming on. I think it's going to be the most valuable episode I've ever done of a podcast. Next week we'll go back to talking about dumb marketing tactics, but for now, this career shit I think like can change lives. It's changed mine. I don't know about you, but like we grew up super broke. I never thought I'd make like 80K a year. At one point felt like, oh, I'd be rich if I made 80K a year. And now I still don't feel rich doing more than that, but it's been great, man. And pumped to have your continued mentorship from afar, dude. It's been great.
Well, I appreciate the friendship too, and the mentorship also. We drop tactics back and forth, so I really appreciate it.
Fantastic episode with the fellas. I'm so pumped that they were able to come on, and I want to leave you all with this last piece of parting advice. If you want to get ahead in your career, whether it's in ecom or marketing or really any other industry, there's a couple things I think you need to do. You need to first work really hard. And then second, you need to acknowledge that no one really gives a shit about how hard you work. They care about the results you can get them, which means you need to get better at your craft. You need to seek out your own education and your own experience so you can get better and improve and optimize everything that you do. So work hard, hone your craft. Once you're really good at what you do, you need to keep asking for better opportunities. And if someone says no, then you need to demand better opportunities. And if they say no again, then you might need to leave that place. You might need to quit that job or fire that client. You need to take risks in order to advance your career quickly and aggressively. The last thing I need you to do is to not get discouraged when this takes a decade to start showing any kind of real results. In hindsight, it's so easy to connect the dots and see that every move I made led me to something bigger and better. And it's easy to look back and say, well, I'm 28 and I'm where I'm at, and it's, a great, story of a young guy coming up. But there was a lot of time over the last 8 years where it did not feel like that. There was a lot of time in the last 8 years where I felt incredibly lost and frustrated and angry and confused. But I kept working hard. I kept honing my craft. I put up big-ass numbers, and I was always looking for better opportunities. And I think that's what you should be doing to get ahead too. Send this episode to someone early on in their career, whatever industry they work in. I think this could be really valuable for them. It's a piece of content that I wish I had 8 years ago, and I really hope it helps some of you out there. So thanks for listening to Tactical and Practical. Shout out to IntelliGems and Postscript, and I'll see you guys next week.